Hello, this is Silas. I'm back with Stephen to finish up I think we'll finish up.
Yep.
To finish up the discussion we've been having on DB Bistro Moderne, we're going to be talking about the desserts today. Stephen, say what's up and tell us a bit about this restaurant.
Good afternoon, everyone. So this is one of my favorite restaurants in New York. We did two videos previously on this, which should be airing soon. This is a little unusual. We're doing a just desserts featured video because I've had quite a few desserts here, which we're going to get into. And because of that, there were so many of them, we decided to do a video just focused solely on these. I think you're really going to enjoy them. The desserts I've always been satisfied with here whenever I've tried them. Hopefully, place will be open again soon, so I can enjoy them as well, enjoy them again. I also wanted to mention that today is also the start of Restaurant Week here in the city. So if any of you are around, there's some places probably have some good deals. It's called Restaurant Week. It really is Restaurant Month. It goes till about August 20th. So it was one of those things that was a week, and they kept expanding it because it was successful. So they ended up making it a month. So it's usually done during the times of year in January and now when restaurants are typically slower with the summer and after the holidays. So the idea is to boost business. So places will do usually prefix menus, different items. Some of the items we featured in the previous videos were from DB's Restaurant Week. Restaurant Week, though, it's kind of hit or miss. Some places do a really good job. Other places kind of give you bogus items that they want to get rid of, or they try to lure you in with the cheap prices, and you end up ordering a la carte anyway. But DB Bistro, I'd say, does a good job, and a few other places I've been to. So it just depends where you go.
All right. And this is part of our series of conversations we've been having on different things. I think it's kind of going back to the original series that we had with You Are What You Consume, but this is starting a specific one called Dishing on Dish, this questions different ones are still playing around with the name of it, but essentially Stephen is been involved in the food industry, goes around and eats at different restaurants, and we just have conversations focusing on different foods that he's eaten and where to start growing this into other things where other people can go to other places. As you mentioned, it's Restaurant Week. We might get to a situation where we get to the point where people restaurant month, where we figure out a structure to get other people to actually use this same kind of system we have, where we just talk about the food itself and then things that are around the food, how it's made, what's around it, like the histories behind these things, the process of actually making the food, how difficult is it to make the food yourself if you want to do it, things to look at when you go to a restaurant, certain things about different cuisines. So it's a rather interesting series that I've been enjoying personally, and I'm thankful for Stephen to be taking this time to actually have these conversations with us. Although by the time this is probably posted, there'll probably be maybe one more week left in Restaurant Week because I'm thinking of posting schedule. I'm going to be trying to post these every Monday. Right now, as we're recording, when we get done with this conversation, I shall be posting the first part of DB Bistro Moderne, which we had a conversation about that, and that mostly covers the appetizers and a bit of the meals. The second part is just all entrees. That'll be posted next week, next Monday, and then this one will be 2 Mondays from now. So not this Monday, not the next Monday, but the next Monday from now, and that will be about halfway through August by that time, I think. Yeah. So that's some things behind this. Anything else you want to say about DB Bistro in particular before we get into the desserts?
Not particularly. So I basically gave an overview of the restaurant in general in the first video and a little bit in the second one. So I'm not going to rehash here. I mean, if you're watching this video, you've probably seen the other two anyway. Well, I was going to say it's interesting with dessert, though, because in general, I don't eat a lot of dessert. I try to watch my sugar intake, but the desserts here are always impressive. And I actually had a friend who worked pastry as well. So she sort of turned me on to some of this stuff. It was years ago now, but we'll go through it. But you'll find there's a very good variety of desserts because I'm trying to remember, there's a few items that they said every dessert menu should have. I think, what is it? It was the C's. It's chocolate, caramel, citrus, and there's one other I'm trying to think. But like they said, every dessert should have at least one of each of those items. That way you sort of cover your bases. And you'll notice in here there's a variety of desserts, but each one was always well done. I don't think I've had a single dessert here that I was disappointed by.
Yeah, and there's something they say in restaurants. We talked. This came up in one of the conversations we're having. Is this some restaurateurs make sure to have a really good dessert menu on their things, even if you just go to have a handful of them. Make sure you put a lot of interest in using the best the best techniques, the best ingredients, because that's often what people will leave will have last before they leave, and that kind of leaves a lasting memory in their mind. Whereas appetizers could be, I guess, in that kind of sense, the least high quality in that sense. You don't really have to worry. There's a lot more leeway out there. Very few people will come to your restaurant and have an appetizer that's not up to par, and then say, okay, I'm leaving. I'm getting up and leaving anymore. I'm not going to care about anything else that comes after this. But there might be some people who might have had a really good meal and then be on such a high from the actual meal itself, then they're like, oh man, it's been such a good night. Let me have a dessert. And then it just has an odd taste to it or a negative feel to it. It's not as grand as they thought it would be. And that could actually overshadow all those things. So I think that's a rather important thing to focus on. And I'm glad to see at least here with DB Bistro, because the ones we've had, we talked about Minetta Tavern, and we talked about Huertas. And now Huertas has very few desserts, but they're pretty decent, the ones that they actually have. So you went back and you got a different Basque cheesecake, I think with strawberries or raspberries this time.
Yeah, this one had berries instead of just the sherry reduction because it's summer, so berries are fresh and local.
And then the churros, like Charles Barkley says, are always a good go-to thing. I mean, pretty much every I think every culture that has some kind of cuisine does the whole, like, we understand as mammals, humans, if we get some kind of sweetened bread and fry it, people are going to be happy. There's ways to go wrong with that. So with the churros on that, but Minetta Tavern, he hadn't gone to too many of the actual desserts that we had there, but this one is going to have a lot more, a lot wider range of the things of desserts to actually talk about. And the other videos, as was mentioned, those are out. There's going to be links wherever you listen to this to actually get to those other videos if you haven't seen those yet. And there's going to be timestamps as well on all those videos, so you can actually go on and you can see in the part 1, which I'm going to release today, there's an intro in there if you want to go more into details of the actual DB Bistro. And Stephen gets into some things about how Daniel Boulud came to actually make the place and some other interesting things that happened both during the conversations and when we're talking about the actual dishes themselves. So yeah, I think without further ado, if you have nothing else to say, we can jump right into it.
I remembered what the fourth C was. It's coffee. So the 4 C's are citrus, chocolate, caramel, coffee. You should have a dessert. You should have a dessert menu that includes at least one of each of those. Because again, you'll find people who don't like chocolate. There's people who don't like coffee. There's people who can't have citrus, supposedly. There's different things. So it's like, but if you have each one of each of those, you sort of cover a few different bases. Plus, each of those items pairs well with different things, as we'll get into below. So it's like you have a few bases, like few basic flavors that you can sort of pair with other things, and you can be more flexible.
I'm trying to think if I've had one that has all of them together. I guess you can have like a tiramisu of sorts, so like some with some grated like orange zest or some orange zest on the top, and sprinkled with a bit of caramel could work together, kind of. Some chocolate shavings. I don't know. What could it be? Have you had anything that has all? Maybe we'll see in this actual dessert thing. Are there any that have all 4?
No, I mean, you typically, of course, chocolate and caramel is common. The Minetta Tavern, I actually tried one of those desserts. We didn't cover it in the video, but I tried it sometime after. Of course, chocolate and coffee, different desserts with that. Citrus you can pair with there's some citrus with chocolate in here. I don't think I've seen all 4 in one dessert though that I remember.
If anyone's listening and has, let us know how that was, what it was, and how it actually tasted, or if you've thought of making something yourself, or that now that you've heard about this, try to think if you can think of some interesting dessert to make yourself, and let us know how that goes, and maybe we'll try it as well. Okay.
All right. Let's jump right in. Yep.
Okay, so let's jump in with the first dessert that we have here. They're going to be up on the screen. Our beautiful faces are going to be leaving the screen right now.
Yeah.
We're going to be showing you the different foods that we had. And the first one here is a coconut gateau, which is coconut, passion fruit, lime zest, and candied pineapple. And you lied to me, Stephen, because this has none of them. Well, I guess it has lime zest. Lime zest. Okay, sorry, it has a lime zest. Okay, so get into it.
Well, passion fruit's considered citrus too. I think it's kind of its own thing.
I guess it's kind of close to that. Like the taste-wise, it is definitely close to the citrus, and then
sure.
Yeah, I guess. All
right. So gâteau is just French for cake. So you can see here, there's kind of like a coconut. It's sort of, I'm not going to say it's like cheesecake exactly, but kind of in that direction. I'm not sure how they made it. I think it's, by the way it tasted, from what I remember, it's similar to cheesecake, cream cheese or something as the base. On top, there's passion fruit mixed with gelatin. So that's how you make that nice yellow layer on top. There's the candied pineapple. You can see here, those little cubes cut up. There's the coconut sorbet that's on top with the lime zest. That's the green. And then these two little white dots are meringue crisps. Basically, you pipe out meringue and then you dehydrate it so it gets solid. And then there's just some passion fruit puree on the other side. You can see kind of the streak. These are just some breadcrumbs that were kind of toasted, a little bit of sugar and brown butter just for flavor. And also, a lot of people will do the breadcrumbs just as the basis of other things. Like some places will put the ice cream on those breadcrumbs because then it stays stable on the plate rather than slides around. But in this case, the sorbet rather, is on the dessert. So.
And you said this was with, you said it was cream cheese kind of base, so it's kind of like a cheesecake. So it's a bit chilled itself in the gateau.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, and it's interesting plating as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, with coconut milk, I like using coconuts in many for coconut oil, coconut milk, coconut desiccated coconut itself. There's many kind of dishes that you can think of where if you use whole cream or any kinds of cream or even milk, you can substitute that with. That to me is my favorite non-dairy milk would be coconut milk. Yeah, that's my favorite one. And there's many, even cereal. I guess it's more expensive depending on where you live to actually have like cereal with coconut milk. But I mean, just coconut milk in general is something that I like using. And so even if you're making something like I think like a cheesecake of sorts, it might be a way to substitute out the dairy or the cheese that you're using in the same process of the cheesecake to actually create a similar type of cheesecake like that. But definitely when it comes to cooking, when it comes to baking, if there is milk in your recipe, you can substitute that out with coconut milk. And for some people who don't like the coconut taste, when you get the coconut oil itself, you can buy the coconut oil that's like the virgin coconut oil, which has the taste of the coconut taken out somehow during the processing method of it. But I prefer actually having the extra taste of coconut in there. So just know that if you are going to use it in your foods, just because you're not using the desiccated coconut yourself, it will have a coconutty taste to it. But to me, that's an appeal, not a negative. But for some people, that might be a negative. And you said this was a coconut ice cream. So do you know if this was a coconut ice cream?
It's a sorbet, so because it's sorbet, there it would be made. As far as I know, it was made with coconut milk. So like it's milk, but it's not dairy because sorbet is dairy free. So that's
okay. That's what I was going to. Yeah, if it's a sorbet, of course, yeah, it is because there's two ways of making coconut ice cream. You can use the coconut milk, I guess, but if you use coconut milk, that might fall into sorbet. But I think you can still do the process where the consistency is still it's still like. For those who don't know, sorbet has more of an icy consistency to it. It's more like, I want to say granular, whereas ice cream is smooth. So it's not necessarily, I don't really, maybe it's close to like something like frozen yogurt for people who've had frozen yogurt.
well, frozen yogurt's dairy, but it's leaner.
Yeah,
That's
there's less of a creaminess to sorbets than there is to ice cream. And even when it goes to, I guess in Italy, I'm forgetting the name that they have. I can't believe I forgot the gelato.
Gelato?
I mean, it is. I think gelato is even airier and creamier than ice cream, and then ice cream's in the middle, especially when you go on that heavy ice cream. I refer to it more in America. That I don't want to say like malt, but there's a heavier type of full cream ice cream that's really dense in America. That's amazing in its own way. I haven't really had too many other places, and then of course, now you have the yogurt, frozen yogurt, and then the sorbet. It's a different kind of beast than it is. I don't know if anyone can think of a good way of describing the difference between sorbet and ice cream, like the mouthfeel type of way. I just think it's more icy, more crystally. It's more crystalline than it is creamy smooth, which I think is more ice cream type of stuff. I don't know.
Sure. So I had a few points to make. So I think of my hero, Ron Swanson, one of the episodes, he's writing a Yelp review trashing frozen yogurt. He goes, he writes to the company, he writes, "You are the celery of desserts. Be ice cream or be nothing." That's funny. So to your point about denser ice cream, I think it has a lot to do with the fat content. So a lot of people don't know that French vanilla originally is yellow because there's more egg yolks in it. Because you typically use egg yolks in general, the creme anglaise, that's the basis for ice cream. But with the French vanilla, there's even more of them. Now, if you buy the commercial stuff, some people cheat and they just put yellow dye in, which is bogus. But originally, it's supposed to be more egg yolk, so it's richer, creamier, obviously higher fat content. And then I think that's ultimately what separates it. And I know with Cold Stone, they're big on the slow churned ice cream that if you slowly churn it, it gradually freezes. And there's the ice crystals that you're getting at. I think that usually forms because if you melt and refreeze things. So when I worked at Eddie and the Wolf, the Austrian place, we actually made sorbet with liquid nitrogen, and that actually freezes it in a way that it doesn't form ice crystals, which is cool. So what we did was we had coffee urn, like think of like a commercial coffee urn where like you pump it down and then like the liquid pours out. We would put liquid nitrogen in that, and then we would pump that into the mixing bowl as it was mixing, and you would gradually do that, and that would gradually freeze it, and it would freeze it in such a way that it wouldn't form the ice crystals. And then I think I may have mentioned in a previous discussion, but at Seasonal, the place I worked right before that, we had a Paco Jet, which is it's like a RoboCoupe, but the blade can either heat up or stay cool, and that actually like can affect the temperature of things. So what would happen was you would pull ice cream in and out of the freezer, it would get solid, but what you do is you would run it through that so it would whip it up. So it was nice because the ice cream, it would get whipped up enough by the blade that it would be smooth and soft again, but it also wouldn't melt either. And then you would have to keep running it through the machine, which is kind of annoying, but it's like if you're putting out nicer food, I mean, you want the better texture.
Yeah. Some of these places you really do get what you pay for, and this is, I guess, something. Well, as we get better at this, we'll try to remember to do these at the start of all the videos. What's the price range? This is a Michelin star restaurant, right? So
No. This actually is not. This is
did it use a Michelin star, or did it ever have it?
Café Balloon had a Michelin star, and then Danielle had two. It had three at one point. Unfortunately, lost it. But this I often said is kind of the in between of, it's not Bar Balloon where I worked. It was more casual. Like this is somewhere in between Cafe Balloon and Bar Balloon. Like it's not. I mean, your entrees, you might spend $30, maybe 40 or more if it's something really nice. The burgers like $30. Appetizers, you could probably get a salad for like $10, but if you get foie gras, you're going to be spending 20 or more. So it depends what you get. I mean, you don't have to spend that much money here. Then obviously, depending how much you drink, which I usually do. So,
Yeah, well, I should have remembered. And because here on TripAdvisor they say Michelin, there's no actual star being.
Well, no, there's Michelin recommended. So there's places that the Michelin guide will recommend that it's not worthy of a star, but we were satisfied, so we recommend it.
I guess if it is a star, they would have added the actual stars on this thing. So let me not speak ill of TripAdvisor, but I should also remember it from the actual conversations. But one of the things we also do is just say that on the price range of it, it's something that's in there. I mean, it's not just an everyday type of thing, but it's in the midst there. And also, we were talking about the difficulty of making certain things. So something like this is, in my opinion, is something that, hey, this is something good to actually go out and try yourself, because the chances of making these sorts of pairings by yourself at home are rather low in general. Even for people who are familiar with cooking, there's a lot of different things going on in this dish. So I think the difficulty level, like you're talking the RoboCoupe, and this is another thing I'll keep reminding you, what is a RoboCoupe? Because some people here have not.
Well, what I refer to as a Paco Jet. So the RoboCoupe is a device with the bladed instrument where the top has a hole. You can put things in it and it blends them with the blade. It's more of like a rough chop. It's not like a blender where it's really smooth. But then a Paco Jet is the same basic idea, except the blade is temperature controlled. So you can heat it up if you want to. You make a compound butter, you put butter in, the whipping it around will actually melt the butter, or you can also keep it cooler. So if you want to blend your ice cream, it'll whip up the ice cream enough that it breaks it up so it's softer, but it doesn't melt the ice cream because a certain degree of friction will melt the ice cream as well. Yeah.
Cool. Maybe, we'll see. We'll see about maybe put some up on the screen. I don't know. Let's see that. Okay. So anything else you have to say about this dish?
No, that's pretty much it.
It seems, I don't know why it seems odd calling desserts a dish. It doesn't seem to fit. Even appetizer, I'm okay with dish, but then when I just said it right there, I'm like, dish? But yeah, it's served in a dish. It's still a dish. I don't know. But anyway. Okay, so the next one. The next one is honey roasted grapefruit with almond biscuit, creme fraiche, and creme fraiche and panna cotta, and Earl Grey ice cream.
Sure.
Interesting.
This strikes me as a very English dish, which I think is kind of funny, but because of the biscuit and the Earl Grey. So I mean I didn't ask, but I'm guessing that's kind of a play on that, like biscuits, and you have it with like tea. So that's kind of a play on that. So basically, the honey roasted grapefruit, my guess is either in the oven or in a pan on the stove. Just give it a little bit of sugar to sort of offset the sourness. Almond biscuit, that's underneath. It's baked. So panna cotta, I mentioned previously, I think it means cooked cream in Italian. So you cook cream typically it's usually a cream-based item. In this case, it was creme fraiche based, similar to sour cream. And you cook it in a water bath and you solidify it with gelatin. Now, it used to be that you use raw milk and the bacteria, and it would actually cause it to curdle on its own. But because there's rules against that now, they don't do that. People add gelatin to thicken it up. So what they do is they make creme fraiche, sugar, all that. They simmer it, they cook it in the water bath, add gelatin sheets which dissolve, and then it solidifies. And from what I can tell, they punch it out with a ring mold like the biscuit, so it'll fit on top of the biscuit. And then there's some grapefruit puree here. The ice cream's on top. There's a little candied lemon zest on top just to kind of finish. Because if you think about it, Earl Grey tea, you typically get lemon with it, so it's playing on
Yeah.
like biscuits, tea, lemon.
Yeah, it's a nice plating as well.
Yeah.
And you could probably imagine with the kind of crumbliness of the biscuits, and then you go with the citrus aspect. If it's roasted, probably might have some charring on it, some little crystallization. But then the way citrus has those citrus, the way non-passion fruit citrus are, like the actual little, what do they call it? What do you call when you actually break out the little parts?
Oh, supremes. They're called supremes. It's like
Okay.
it's spelled like supreme, but in French it's supreme.
Okay. But in English, do they also just say supremes?
I mean, kitchens I've worked, they always did.
Okay.
Yeah. Could you
So when you break
supreme
out
this orange?
okay.
Yeah.
So each of those little things that you break out, those little crescents that you break out of the fruit, like when you actually break down, like this is something that I've been doing since I was a kid, and I'll just go and like kind of dissect foods and get them to the smallest possible parts while still maintaining an actual thing, and get down and see the threads of the meat. So anyway, so with that, the citrus has those little packets, so it's within the little crescents. Even when you break those down, they have little sections within those crescents, and then within those sections, when you get down to it's little teardrops of just orangey goodness or citrusy goodness, like with juice. So I can imagine that kind of exploding out, and then the creme fraiche. So you said the panna cotta. It's a bit like, is it like a cheese of sort, like a soft cheese, like a brie or something?
I'm trying to think of what to compare it to. I mean, it's maybe it's a little looser than that because you have to figure it's cream, but there's like a little bit of gelatin enough so it holds together. Not enough. It's not thick like Jello, but there's a little bit of gelatin that holds it together.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of a comparison here. Yeah, because it's not like cream cheese. It's not like mozzarella. It's not
It's not
like
like mayo. It's not like because I'm thinking.
no.
It seems like to be like a three biter type of dessert, right? You're not just popping it in the mouth by like at one go, right?
Right. Well, panna cotta is a general technique, but this one they do like a small version that they punched out with a ring mold. So my guess is that the way they did this was they probably had a whole tray and then they just punch it out with a ring mold and then put each circle on the plate.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Because I'm wondering, like, if you bite into it, will it like squirt all over the place, or is it like
Uh,
yeah, but if it stays together? But yeah, it seems like a good thing. And then of course, yeah, the Earl Grey. When I first read it, for some reason I was thinking Grey Goose. It's like, is there alcohol in it? No, it's like Earl Grey. It's a bit of a different thing. Is Grey Goose from the same area?
That's a good question, actually. Well, Earl Grey is English. Grey Goose is French, right?
Yeah. And is it because it was from the Earl of an area called Grey, and then the Grey Goose is the actual bird itself that is gray? I don't know. I'll check
Could be. Good. Yeah.
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 This looks good. I mean,
Yeah.
but it's the desserts. I've already looked through them. We haven't like talked over, but I've looked through them, of course, as
Yeah.
we're prepping this thing and he sends you the document. And there's a lot of good, exciting things in here.
Sure.
But yeah. And so that's a little twist of citrus on the top there, right?
Yep. Yeah, just some candied lemon zest.
Yeah, Earl Grey ice cream. That's another thing that I think people need to go out and just search out different things. There's so many. If you like ice cream, people are like, yeah, it's vanilla or chocolate. I'm like, it could be boring. Could be boring. Or like Napolitan. Napolitan is a Napolitan. No, Napolitan. I don't know. Napolitan.
Neapolitan. I've heard Neapolitan.
It's like chocolate, vanilla, and
Yeah.
strawberry. People
Neapolitan.
like,
Yeah.
like that's so boring. There's so many different things you can do out there.
Yeah.
And ice cream, I think, might have a bit of to get used to making it the way you do it with like the ice bath, and so there's a little technique to do it, but it's easy to get the hang of it. And once you get the hang of it, you can do many other things by adding different kind of flavors into it. So that's something that if somebody's interested in and they're kind of intermediate in cooking, I think it's a dessert that might be good to do. And especially if you have like kids, I think it can be super exciting to make all kinds of different ice creams. And of course, then you can also control the content of the things in it, because you get to a situation where you're living in a country where, due to regulations, whole milk to actually have this panna cotta done in a traditional manner is against some certain rules, or the full milk. Yet you have all kinds of things being processed foods being served to children like in government schools. It's like there's no rhyme or reason for some of these things. Well, yes, there might be some people who did some things in a certain way, then some people got ill and then they sued and then like, oh, we have to do this whole thing, and then now it's kind of just stuck in the law and a thing like that. But
Yeah.
does it really come down to the point where is not allowing people to use full milk really, is it really helping that many people? Maybe it's not harming anyone as well too, because you're saying, okay, like this dessert is still being made in a different way with gelatin, but is the gelatin really that far superior to the whole milk, or is it like the risk of it worth it? I don't know, some of these things.
Well, no. Also, to add on to your point, a lot of restaurants, if you notice, and maybe we'll do Netta, the sushi place I worked at, they did it too. Is that there's a disclaimer at the bottom of the menu saying eating raw or undercooked food may increase your chance of foodborne illness. Now, obviously, it's handled in a way not to do that, but there is that possibility. So if you get sick, you can't sue the place because it's like that is a chance when you do that. But I mean, there, as we've been discussing with COVID and all this other stuff, I mean, there's risk to everything. Like there's risks going out and walking down the street, but it's like you're not going to not go down the street because there's a chance you could get hit. At some point you have to take a chance.
Yeah, it's a cost benefit analysis. There's risk deciding you don't want to go back to work until a certain amount of the people have done a certain procedure, and then you risk losing that job. Some people have the risk, like you say, okay, I have to actually go right now because I feel like I have to maintain this sort of quality of life, or I have these people depending on me, and then they put themselves in a position of danger. This is life. This is life, and life isn't all a dessert, I guess. I mean, like there's the just wait. Is it just desserts or just desserts? What's
just
the,
desserts?
It's
just desserts. Yeah.
Just deserves. But anyway, so yeah, okay. So anything else you want to say about this?
Not really, no.
So difficulty level on making this I guess with the biscuits, it's rather straightforward to make the biscuits. The creme fraiche might be the hardest part, but yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think this dish is too hard to make. I mean, obviously, you need a little bit of finesse to present it and make it look nice. To do the quenelle, the scoop on top, I mean, I can't really demonstrate it here, but you basically have to scoop it along the side of the container and you sort of use the edge of the container to like slide it along so it has this almost not egg shape exactly, oval kind of. I'm not trying to describe a quenelle, but I got pretty good at doing it actually. I used to do it at my old job, but a lot of higher end places do ice cream and sorbet and everything this way.
It's like the alien ship in Arrival. I remember see that movie. But yeah, okay. So next one.
Sure. Yep.
Okay, now this one's it might be a bit of a struggle to actually be able to present it at least in this manner, even if you can actually make the thing. So we have a pavlova, which is a coconut tapioca, passion fruit curd, citrus coulis, and
coulis. Coulis. That's the silent. Yep.
Citrus coulis. So yeah, that's. I mean, it looks like when people who watch anime or play video games, it looks like a slime from one of those like Dragon Quest games where it's just like jumps around one of the lower level enemies, but it's like a white slime. But yeah, tell us a bit about this.
Sure. So I first want to give a shout out to my friend Kara because she says this is her favorite dessert and she's happy whenever I post a pavlova, and she's posted a few on her page as well. So it's actually named after a Russian ballerina, but who was performing in New Zealand, and they made the dessert in honor of her. That's where it came from. Yeah. Oh. And there's different ways to do this. I mean, I guess the more conventional method is meringue is basically laid out on a sheet tray and then fruit is on top. But the way they do it here is the fruit is actually inside the meringue. So what they do is they put fruit, I think, in like a ring mold or something, and then they pipe the meringue around it. So then when you break this open, the fruit's inside, and you actually have you can see some of the passion fruit, that's like a puree. It's some of you can see that by the seeds, it's the actual coulis itself. It's the seeds and then some citrus. But then inside there's the curd. So the curd, if you think of like lemon meringue pie, the yellow on the bottom. They did that with passion fruit, and that's inside the meringue here. So it's like you break that open, it's inside. It's very nice. In retrospect, this is one of those things that I should have cut open and taken a picture of inside as well. But it's really, really nice dessert, and you can see too, it's really cool. They did some passion fruit like streaks throughout the meringue, so there's those nice yellow streaks running along. It's more presentation in this case, but it looks kind of cool on the plate, I think.
Yeah. Passion fruits is one of my favorite fruits. At least when I do, if I had the choice to drink only one sort of actual like whole juice, so not like juice drink, but just actual juice, it would be passion. I also like baking with passion fruit, which is a bit of I'm living in Arabic, so passion fruits are something that when in season, they just get a whole mess of them. Same thing with avocados. That's one of the things. I have many complaints or issues with living in Arabic, but one I don't have is just the biodiversity and the seasonal kind of things when it comes to like fruits and foods. Like the foods are truly get truly, I don't want to say artisanal, but there's not as much of there's an artificial nature in some of the foods that you get on average and that you have average access to in the United States of America that is rather depressing once you've actually known the difference between that. And this might be a different thing with, I don't know if necessarily just depending where you live or it's more of a city thing, because I've lived in the countryside areas, I've lived in like major cities. And of course, it also depends on where you're going to go. But so much of the food, even if you do go to a restaurant or go to the grocery store and just get like an apple, for example, chances are that apple was picked like months ahead of the time and was preserved in a certain way or shipped or during the shipping process needed to be held in a certain state that kind of froze its actual nature of being alive. And I think when you do that, there's nutrients and things that are taken out of the food. That's why there's so much food that needs to be enriched or fortified because due to either the selective process of growing it and getting it to a certain point or you have an even crop that's on the schedule with that whole industrial farming kind of system that's out there. Yes, it gets nutrition and calories to people in a certain way, but then there's something that's lost, I think, in that whole process of the foods, and that's something that I definitely see that's different living in Arabic and in the average kind of food. Even if I just go to like a random kiosk and I can get things for like 25 cents, and those tomatoes you get there, some might be rotten, some might go bad, and things like that. But you can tell like this was a thing that was probably picked like 2 days ago at most. Like that's the kind of thing, and I think there's still a life force of sorts in there. I don't want to get all like woo science, but I think it seems like there's some more life force in those kind of foods that you get in that kind of sense. So the passions with baking, the first time I used it and baked with it in the cake, I just didn't put two and two together as part of just the whole trying out things. I put it in some kind of cake. It was a kind of banana bread. I was making a banana bread type of cake type of thing, and then I put the passion fruits in it. And then as I was eating it, I just kept getting these crunches and was like, God, am I cracking my teeth? Like there should be nothing hard in this. Like I thought, what's going on? But it was the actual seeds
Yeah.
from the passion fruit because I hadn't drained just I hadn't drained it out, so it's just the pulp or the juice. Like I just put the entire kind of thing, scooped out the interior of the passions and kind of just whisked it into the batter. So if you do that, that's something that could be desirable because now that I know that's something that's done, the seeds themselves are they get baked and they get kind of hard, but they're not hard enough to actually crack your tooth unless you have super weak teeth. But they make a really strong crack when you actually have it. So that could be something that now I can incorporate if I want that kind of experience in actually having a meal, which could be uncomfortable to some, could be positive for some, but it's just something I thought when you just saw it to the passion fruits. But yeah.
So Les Spalier, where I did my externship, we actually had a passion fruit foam, which went with the oyster dish. It was really nice. But the thing is, it was based off of the puree. So the puree you would have to thaw out. You mix, there was like sugar. There was something called Versa Whip, which makes something like you whip it into something. It basically whips it into a foam and it retains the foam state. And then you scoop that and put that on the plate. You do have to re-whip it periodically. Now, obviously fresh passion fruit is ideal, but as you know, it's not grown around here, and this was in Boston during the winter, so it's like a lot of places will do puree or juice or something. The other thing I had recently was I actually got from my local store, I got a passion fruit jam that was really nice, and that had the seeds that you're describing in it. So it's one of those, yeah, you're chewing, you're going to be biting down, but I mean, I don't mind it. I mean, my teeth are not that sensitive, but for some people, that texture just doesn't agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This seems it's almost like a burrata, like a dessert version of burrata, where the burrata, for those who don't know, is it's kind of in this similar shape. When you get the mozzarella, it's mostly in northern Italy, but you can get it anywhere in Italy. You can also get it, you can find it if you live in the States. If you're reading this, I think I've even found burrata here in Nairobi, Kenya. If you can get it in Nairobi, Kenya, you can get it anywhere that you're actually hearing
Yeah.
this. But so that's done with a situation where the panna cotta, the heavy cream is in there with strips of mozzarella, and then they mold the mozzarella on top of it. So when you cut open, like the cream kind of comes out, and little strips of the mozzarella, or the thicker mozzarella, come out as well with the outside. So that's kind of interesting. I'll try to look around a bit and online, or Stephen might find his way back doing doing what's it called, doing restaurant week to see if I can find a image of it cut open. I'll just do like a search online and see if so we'll include that. If not, you can just imagine it.
I
Imagine
would
the
push I would push back a little bit against your burrata comparison though, because this meringue is solid, so it's not going to be soft because what it is they put the curd in the middle and then they pipe the meringue around it as far as I can tell. And then what you do is you either chill the meringue or you put it in a dehydrator and then it just solidifies around the curd and then you break it open and just scoop into it. It's nice. Oh,
Yeah, no, that I remember just in the presentation, it looking like that, and
oh,
you were talking about it being kind of solid on the outside, and then
yeah.
the inside has more liquidy,
Yep.
flavorly type of things that come out once you open it up. Like the point of having it is not just to have slices, but to open it first and then
Yep.
get that food experience of having a container holding some goodness in the inside, which I
Yeah.
think is close enough.
Yep.
Speaking about that,
Sure.
I don't know. I haven't. It's one to what is it? Beef Wellington. I want to make a beef Wellington sometime soon, but like that's another more like high level type of
It's a little
difficult.
involved, yes.
Yeah, the difficulty level is a bit higher, a smidge higher on the beef wellies. But yeah, okay. Anything else you want to say about this?
Oh no, that's it.
Okay, so moving on to the next one. All these foods I can kind of imagine. Like I maybe I've just played a whole lot of role playing games or anime and things like manga and stuff. Like imagine creatures all looking like these kind of things. Like this, I forget which game it was has a creature that looks like this. So anyway, on the screen right now we have a sweet potato pavlova, which is sweet potato ice cream, cranberry sorbet, and cinnamon chantilly.
Sure. All right. So, Kara, here's another pavlova for you. So this is similar to above the pavlova. It's a meringue. Inside the bottom one here is actually the sweet potato ice cream. So my guess is the way they make that is they probably take a very solid ball of the sweet potato ice cream and then pipe the meringue around it, and then they probably throw it in the freezer or probably a freezer so it solidifies. That way, it's like the meringue gets solid and it freezes around the ice cream. Then the ball in the middle is the cranberry sorbet. And then on top, there's the cinnamon chantilly. That's basically, well, chantilly, sorry, no, wait, sorry. On top is another piece of meringue. Then on the bottom is a cinnamon chantilly. Chantilly just means whipped cream. So it's just like a little bed of it on the bottom. And then there's a little bit of cranberry puree here. As I'm sure you can tell, this is a fall dish, cranberry, sweet potato, fall time. So it's kind of a play on that. Cinnamon, of course, goes with the sweet potato and everything. Yep.
Yeah, so this will be one of the dishes where they'll be able to have the general construction of the dish will be something that's common, but then depending on the season you go to, they'll switch around the different ice creams or the different
Yeah.
accompaniments that go with the pavlova, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like what fruits and vegetables are seasonal and how they work together and all that.
All right, interesting. Have you had any others besides this one?
I think I have at other places. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but I don't think here. I mean, I only included these two here. I think these were the only ones I had at DB though. Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm thinking, okay, now that you've got the sweet potato ice cream, is there a way to have and I've had more savory ice creams, but I'm
Yep.
trying to think now, is there a way to where this is the thing we just also joked around with my brother this and we talked about this I think even personally, like sometimes why do people feel the need they have to have certain foods and certain dishes at certain times? Like why is that whole idea, oh you wake up and then you have to first of all you even have to have breakfast to begin with. Second of all, it has to be there's breakfast foods. I'm like, no, food is food. Like whatever you actually have first is you're breaking your fast. So that situation has happened where I think breakfast foods have more meandered. Traditionally, breakfast foods have more meandered into other meals and things like that. But can you do that on the inverse, where you can have like ice cream as part of an entree? Like if you had like a potato ice cream that's not a sweet potato ice cream, but is more like just starchy with that more substantial potato-y taste. So it's kind of like I guess a coldish sort of mashed potatoes. Maybe you can find a way to have that accompanied as just part of a regular entree dish, where you can maybe there might be other flavors of ice cream that now maybe can you have a chicken like a foie gras flavored ice cream, and then you have that as part of maybe an appetizer or something, or you have a beef Wellington flavored ice cream, and then you have that as part of your entree. There might be a way to actually do that. I'm sure if you just do the traditional way, or not the traditional way, or the modern way of figuring out which kind of chemicals make the taste of beef Wellington, then you just insert those chemicals into a typical non-flavored ice cream. You can do it that way. So I'm thinking more of the classic ways where when you make an ice cream, you're actually using puree or chopped versions or actual physical parts of the food that's flavoring it into the thing. So I'm wondering if there might be a way to do that.
So to answer your question, there's something called an intermezzo. If you remember when we did the French laundry video, they got an intermezzo, a sorbet course. So the idea is an intermezzo. You can tell it means in between. It's basically to cleanse the palate. So they had, I think there was like beet sorbet. I'm trying to remember if it was cucumber sorbet, things like that that are a little more on the savory side because the idea is you don't want sweet stuff because it sort of throws off the palate, but something that's a little stronger and a little more either acidic or like it sort of helps cleanse the palate and ready for the next course because the fat tends to build up on the palate, so that's why. I've actually had foie gras ice cream, but it was on a dessert. I'm trying to
Cool.
remember. Yeah, I'm trying to. It was with like a brioche cake or something. I'm trying to remember now, but like I've had like, but it has a little bit of foie mixed in, and I guess what they probably do is they adjust the ratio of cream or milk, but instead do some foie, and then you adjust the cream and milk accordingly. So it's going to be like a thicker, heavier ice cream, but then there's sugar and other things in that, so it's still a sweeter ice cream. I mean, I haven't really seen savory ice creams. I mean, if someone can pull it off, I'll take a look, but I haven't seen as of yet.
The savory I've had were more like the different, more based off of spices, which, as we mentioned in
Yeah.
the last one, where it's like the umami type. No, it's the last one, the first one. Anyway, we're talking about how like spice like a separate type of thing. Where it's like not really a category of food where spices.
Yeah.
But yeah, like a curry one, where instead of using like any other powder that you'd use in there, you just put like curry powder in it, and then you have that kind of more just a curry taste with the ice cream mouthfeel and the coldness, of course. So, yeah.
I think I mentioned before I had saffron ice cream, but that was sweeter. That was in an Indian place. I'm trying to remember what it was with, but that was on the sweeter side. Like there was saffron in it, you could taste it, but there was definitely sugar and other things too. So
Yeah, so let us know if you listen to this. Which kind of what food do you think you would be appetizing for you to have as an ice cream, and then which ones would not? Or what is the most off the wall flavor of ice cream that you've had that you didn't think that you were going to like, and you surprisingly found yourself liking? Or are you just a Napolitan is as far as you're going to go as the mix of chocolate strawberry and what's it called and chocolate strawberry and vanilla. Is that as adventurous as you get when it comes to ice cream?
sure. All right.
Yeah. So anything else?
No, that's all I had on that.
Okay. So the sorbet, the chantilly. Oh, you said the chantilly was more like just a puree.
It means like whipped cream. So it's
It's a
usually whipped cream, and they just put some cinnamon and just sort of
Okay.
they
So the
put like a
cinnamon
little bit on the
powder,
bottom.
grind up some
Yeah.
cinnamon and put it into the whipped cream. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So the next one. It's kind of this kind of looks like what I mean. It looks like more like a high level mud pie. I don't know if you know what mud pie is.
Yeah.
Something that I had when I was in
Yeah.
West Virginia. It's a regular thing whenever they have get-togethers in West Virginia, kind of barbecues or parties. There's a high chance you're going to have somebody have brought especially if it's a potluck. Somebody will bring some mud pie in there, which is amazing. If you haven't tried it, definitely go out and try it. So this is warm pineapple and mango crumble, cane sugar streusel, and passion fruit and coconut rum sorbet.
Sure. So Americans say streusel. The German pronunciation is streusel. It's one of those things like I consider either one right. I mean, depending on who we're talking to. So you can tell here this is kind of like a mini pie. The pineapple and mango is as there's pineapple and mango inside. There's a little bit of passion fruit too, although it's not as dominant of a flavor. There's just the streusel. That's sort of you can see sort of that crumbly crust. It's usually like brown sugar. I'm trying to think what else is in there. And then powdered sugar on top. Then, of course, the coconut rum sorbet on top with a little bit of lime zest as well. As you can see, it's a very Caribbean sort of themed dessert. I'm trying to think if I had this in the summer or when. It was a few years ago now, but
Huh.
pretty simple, but well done. I didn't have a lot more to say. I don't know if you had any questions or.
What's okay? And the streusel is a streusel.
Streusel, yeah.
Down with Germany.
Uh,
I still don't forgive them for that little Austrian guy that let get in there.
uh,
So okay, so the crumble is just on top. What's the base? You said is a streusel, right? That's what
well, the streusel is the crumbling on top. It's typically made of butter,
it goes
sugar,
up to
and
the cane sugar
flour.
streusel. So yeah,
And then
what's
the fruit itself is inside. Like you would cut open, it'd be like a pie.
okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So yeah, this one would be something that's rather relatively easy to make. And yeah,
yeah.
if you're having sugar, at least if you don't want to cut down sugar in your life, please at least find a way to switch to something like cane sugar or one thing I've used more in baking. I might put them up on the screen right now. I don't know if I remember. I just did some recent things where I use this thing called jaggery, which is something here in Kenya. I think that's more of a brand than the thing, but it's just like whole unrefined sugar, and that's something excellent to actually have in your food. But it's just some of these things, like the processed aspect of some of these things, really does get in a situation where I'm not saying like sugar is just like horrible in general. It's I would suggest, I'm not a nutritionist, but I would suggest it's improved my life to reduce the amount of extra sugar, added sugar that I have in my meals. But if I do get as close to the actual system that is, because in part that we have evolved as a animal to consume certain things in a certain way. And this goes even past like the whole situation where there are some people, you are what you eat was part of the whole like reason behind this initial series of conversations, where it wasn't necessarily just physically like the food you take in is converted into who you are, but more the cultures and the things around there. But that part of the physical food that you actually take in, there's reasons we've adjusted to be able to eat certain foods. There's certain animals that eat certain plants that would kill us dead. There's certain animals that would eat the food that we have and they would die. So
Yeah.
we're used to eating certain things in a certain way. Hundreds of thousands of years from now, we might have evolved to process super granulated food in a certain way where that's what our physical bodies at that time could break down and get the most out of. Like part of the reason that certain people have certain cycles when they have to dispose of waste is due to the fact that their body can only utilize like 10% of the actual food mass that they're taking into their system. And that is something that I think is something rather simple for most people to be able to try. And that's something that I've done before I tried different things like keto or like going into different kind of cycles of fasting and things like that. But just try to change your diet. If you're having a heavily processed food, just try to eat the same things, but try to keep them as whole as possible, as non-processed as possible. And just see what happens. Even if you just do that for a week and you're eating the same amount of calories, you will see that your body is using more of the actual food that you take in. Like if you eat like a full-on fruit, you eat something that weighs 100 kilograms, like 100 pounds, it's going to use like 75 of those pounds. Maybe the fiber will come out. But if you have a processed version of that same thing and that same kind of weight, your body's only going to be able to hold on to like 25% of that. And that's
Yeah.
part of why there is an obesity issue. That's part of why there's issue with these nutritional deficiencies, because you're taking a lot of physical mass that's filling you up in a certain sense, but it's not actually triggering your mind that you're actually full because you're not full. Your body's not actually using the stuff. So you kind of
Yeah.
eat more to get that feeling. You're filling yourself up. You're expanding your stomach. There's so many negative things that are happening out there in a
Yeah.
situation where you have so much access to information and also so much access to actually time-saving devices where you can actually improve your situation in whichever kind of sphere of existence that you're living in. There's probably ways you've done, and maybe you've maxed out your nutritional benefit, your nutritional kind of intake in your situation. And if you are, more proud to you. Congratulations for doing it. But most people listen to this, myself included, probably if we know that there's some ways we could improve our dietary intake without having to add too many costs that are actually to the spending on the time that we're actually doing it. There's many small ways you can do it, and that's just my little rant. I don't know where
Sure.
that came
All right.
from. It's a good way of
It's all right. It's worthwhile.
yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have much else to say about this dish. I mean, you can tell it's pretty simple. I mean, if you've made like peach pie or like a streusel dish, you could probably do this yourself. If you were to cut it open, the fruit, it would be typical to like peach pie or something. Although if I remember, the fruit was diced, not slices. But I mean, the same basic idea. And you put it in, you bake it, then you put the crust on top at the end. You just finish it in the oven. Then
Yeah.
ice cream at the very end. Yeah, pretty simple, but well done, of course.
Yeah. I mean, I just went that whole entire rant when I was telling people to try mud pie, and mud pie is not. But then even with mud pie, that's the kind of thing. Like even if you're making a mud pie, there's ways to do that with more like fresher, wholer, more ingredients. And the key way to do that is to learn to cook yourself because you control the ingredients that go into that. If you want to make your own version of Oreos, it might not taste exactly like Oreos, but chances are they'll be healthier than Oreos by you deciding what exactly you're putting into the actual food that you're actually making. But yeah, and this is served in a tart-shaped dish. That's not the actual
Yeah.
crust, right?
Um, it's a tart-shaped dish. Wait, sorry, what was your question about the crust? I didn't fully
No, I was just saying
follow.
it's not an actual crust. It's a tart-shaped dish that has those little ridges
Yeah,
on
and
it.
then they bake them. They're each in. You probably like put in an oven with like a sheet tray. And then there's all these containers lined up, and then yeah.
Okay, that's one of the things that I want to try making next time. I don't think I've ever done the old like pastry with the tart to the outside. I think that's just one of the things I want to go through. Right now, my cookie and cake and bread game, like banana bread type of thing, not like actual like yeast bread thing, is tip top. But I want to upgrade now to get like tarts in there.
Sure.
It's my next challenge. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So next one.
Sure.
This one is a baked Alaska, which is
Yep.
mango, passion fruit sorbet, no, passion fruit, yeah, sorbet, dark chocolate sorbet, and bittersweet biscuit meringue.
Sure. So this goes back to the point earlier, the discussion about chocolate and citrus being paired. This was good. I actually had this on my birthday. So for those who don't know, baked Alaska, you can probably tell by the name what it is you make kind of like an ice cream cake and then you put meringue on top. And the way they classically did it was the ice cream would be frozen solid and the meringue would be on top. And then they would bake it in the oven, but just long enough for the meringue to bake, but not long enough to melt the ice cream. And then what a lot of people do now, though, is they assemble it, they freeze it, but then they hit the meringue with a blowtorch so it's browned. But then because of that, the ice cream really holds up. So you can tell here. So on the bottom, there's the bottom and the bottom, and then towards the top, there's the chocolate biscuit, and then there's the mango passion fruit sorbet. That's the bottom orange layer, and then there's the dark chocolate sorbet right on top of that. So notice it's chocolate sorbet, not ice cream. So there's no dairy. It's just chocolate, sugar, water, and then meringue on the outside, hit with a blowtorch, like I say. And then I want to say that was a passion fruit puree, I think, along the bottom.
Hmm.
I really like this dish. Barbaloo had one as well, which they actually flambéed table side, like they poured some
Oh,
brandy
cool.
on and lit the meringue. But the thing was, I only took a photo, and it dawned on me later. I'm like, why didn't I do a video? But I have this photo that's like, yeah. But for future reference, like with the Minetta Tavern Grand Marnier souffle, something like that is cool to record on video.
Yeah. So you said, yeah, this one has those. Is cranberry considered to be citrusy in the sweet potato pavlova? I mean,
uh
that's a rule, but you don't have to stick to the rule. I know it's a guide. I'm sure the thing is still delicious without using one of the four C's, but
no, I mean, no, I just thought this dessert was interesting because passion fruit and chocolate I think actually works well together, and
yeah, it definitely does.
I thought it's kind of an underrated combination.
I've
But
had passion fruit things with white chocolate, but not with.
okay,
I mean, yeah, I can work with dark chocolate as well too, but with the white chocolate, it's really an excellent mix. I mean, this definitely does look delectable. This one would have a bit of a challenge to make it because you get like with the whole like getting the blowtorching right, you know, it's like melt through your
well,
whatever
this is
you're doing.
well, I don't know. I mean, with this, it's like you could probably tell by the way it's cut. What they did was they probably did a sheet tray, and they probably did like, a sheet of biscuit on the bottom. Then you lay out the sorbet, you lay out the mango passion fruit sorbet, freeze it, lay out the chocolate sorbet, freeze it, then do with another layer of biscuit, then the meringue over top, and then just hit it with a blowtorch. And then
All
when it
right.
comes time to serve it, you probably just slice out each individual piece. Um, this was on the restaurant week menu, so I'm not gonna say like I'm not gonna say it's a cheaper dessert, but it's like a little scaled down version of this. Whereas like the one at Barbaloo was like a la carte, but that's the one where they flambe tableside, but you're paying a little more, so you're paying for things like that too. Yeah.
It's like a teaser. It's a teaser of a
Yeah.
teaser of a dessert. Teaser of a dessert.
It was well done though for sure. Yeah.
It's like a trailer. But yeah, it looks good. It looks great.
Yeah.
So there was a passion fruit.
Yeah.
Two little strips. There was a passion fruit flavor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that looks good.
And,
I'm really
we didn't really talk about it much, but passion fruit on its own is very sour, so typically you add a lot of sugar. But from what I recall with this dessert, it was well balanced. Where like the mango passion fruit sorbet was probably one of the sweeter items on the dish, but it's still a little sour from the passion fruit. But then the chocolate is not overly sweet because, like it says here, it's bittersweet. But the flavors are that right balance. I felt like I don't like desserts that are drowned in sugar, but I feel like this had the right amount where it was still sweet, but it wasn't like you still tasted the bitterness from the biscuit. You tasted a little bit of the sourness. Like it was well balanced, I thought.
do you know which passion fruits they're using? Was it the smaller purplish crinkly ones, or was it the bigger orange kind of solid skin ones?
That's a good question. I'm not sure actually.
Because the smaller ones, I think it's like as close to a definition of that of what tart I think is supposed to mean. Like not
Yeah.
tart in the whole like torta type of thing, but the tart. When you say
Yeah.
the taste bud wise tart, I think passion fruits are an excellent an excellent description of what that is. But then the bigger yellow like smoother skin ones, those ones tend to be sweeter in general, and the
Yeah.
interior also is more darker greenish. Whereas those smaller ones, you can get some that are really like deep orange and yeah. So I'm guessing you're using the smaller purple ones because those are the
Yeah.
ones that have this color more so than the larger ones.
Yeah. And I think if you buy the puree, it's made from the little ones that you're describing, but I'm not sure because I didn't work there, so I can't say.
Right.
Uh,
All
all
right.
right.
So next one.
Yep.
Here we have a plum tart, which is blackberry puree, candied hazelnuts, and blackberry semifreddo.
Sure. So this was a very interesting dish. So on the left here, there's a plum tart. In French, there's a dish called a tarte tatin. It's named after the Tatin sisters, Tatin. So what it is, it's basically like an upside down pie where what you do is you sort of caramelize some fruit in a pan on the stove, and then you lay them out in a pan. You put a crust on top of that, and then you bake it, and you flip it over so that caramelized fruit is facing up. There was some whole story about the Tatin sisters about how I guess they screwed up a pie or something, and they flipped it over, and they just made a new dessert. Yeah, but it was pretty good though. The plum, and it's brown on the outside. Then there's the blackberry puree with blackberry and mint. You can see in the middle. Now, semifreddo is interesting. So it's a custard based off of egg yolks, cream, and sugar. It means half frozen. So the idea is that it's a mousse, but it's frozen part way. So when you bite into it, it's not like a popsicle. It's like it does sort of. I'm trying to think how to describe it. It's like a mousse that's partially frozen. So when you bite into it, it sort of dissolves like a mousse, but it is kind of frozen too. So it's like it's not ice. It's. I'm not gonna say if it's a cross between ice cream and a mousse, sort of. I'm trying to think how to describe the texture exactly. And Thomas Keller actually has a really cool version of it. He does a dish, coffee and donuts. I think in the French Laundry video they show it briefly where there's donuts, but then the coffee, what he does is he does a coffee flavored mousse, and then he actually pours hot milk over it. So you bite into it, and it's like the hot versus the cold. It's kind of nice.
Uh, but
So
this one is
so
it's the mousse inside in this one in this semifreddo is not warm. It's just room temperature, right?
Well, it's frozen, but then when they bring it out to your table, it'll warm up a little bit. So it means like, half frozen. So
But it's room temperature. It's not like the hot and cold thing.
I mean, it's colder, but it's not solid like ice cream or something.
Yeah. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking, there's sometimes they call them like, that's the weird thing. Why do they call those chocolates truffles? I guess because they kind of look like truffles.
Because they were modeled off of the truffles from out of the ground.
Okay. But yeah, with some of the truffles, they have that kind of thing where it's outside is more solid than you bite in, and there's like a liquidy type of consistency inside. So I guess it can be something like that. Or even certain cheeses, certain soft cheeses, like if you have a certain kind of gorgonzola, will have like some parts that are crusty. I don't like that, but it's each their own. I prefer the whole straight. Well, there's some more brie type of cheeses where I like when it's like super, where the inside is like really milky. And I had an experience having this amazing dish. Was it's like deep fried brie. It was like a small wheel of brie, but breaded and then deep fried. So it's like has that crust on the outside, and you cut inside, and the brie has like melted into like a liquid. Oh, it was delectable. It was, yeah, amazing.
Yeah, this used to be a South African place across the street from me. They served it there, so I didn't know if that was like a regional thing or you just happened to try it.
No, I tried it. I was in New York. I tried it. It was like it was amazing. But yeah, I don't know. Anything else to say about this? It kind of also looks a bit like a brain. It's
Yeah, little.
brain.
Yeah, and I pointed in my notes too. I didn't have any dessert wine here. I just had cappuccino. I love coffee, but I try to not have coffee generally late at night because I don't fall asleep. But I could if it wasn't for that, I could drink coffee all the time, honestly.
Yeah, that's like one scoop. So these are rather small because otherwise the little cake is kind of that's either a massive blackberry or it's this little small size. It's kind of like 2 bite type of thing. So each of them 2 or 3 bites at least.
Yeah, it wasn't a huge dessert.
It's a nibbling type of thing. But yeah, this one again, that cake thing again. Go out there and experiment different things because you might be the one to make up this something new. But then, yeah, it's to me, I just enjoy the process of cooking, and sometimes I'll fall out of it due to different issues. But then, whenever I'm feeling more up and at it, probably there's a good chance I have been cooking on a regular basis, like actually experimenting and not just doing this the basic kind of getting nutrition into my body. And again, this is making time, but then that process, in my estimation, is something enjoyable to actually get more familiar with and test out some of these things. And this looks like something that, even with that mousse, there's ways you might be able to just, if you have a freezer, just go out there and experiment, try to get that. But then the turnover cake, which is essentially like a pineapple turnover, it's kind of sort of in that kind of sort of not
Well,
really that kind of place,
I
right?
describe it as like a pie, but it's basically baked where it's like the crust is only on top and then you flip it over when you serve it. So that exposed caramelized fruit is on top.
Okay. So the pie is on top. And oh yeah.
I had an apple tart tatin. I don't know if you yesterday. I don't know if you saw my recent Facebook post at this French place near me. I posted that. Like there's an apple is kind of the classical version, I guess.
Okay. All right.
All right.
So moving on to the next one.
Sure. Yeah.
So this is something that your mom got. So this is together with after she had
Yep.
the club, the chicken, the
Yep.
club sandwich.
Yep.
Okay, so this was a tarte au praline,
Yep.
which is chocolate shortbread, vanilla
Yep.
chantilly, and amaretto ice cream.
All right, so I want to apologize in advance for the sloppy presentation. What happened was we were taking photos and she started to dig into hers, and I was like, "Come on, let me get a photo of this." So she turned it around, but you can see the caramel still kind of got messed up. But it was a really nice dessert. I was like, "Let's just record it for posterity's sake." So chocolate shortbread on the bottom, I think you can see vanilla chantilly. So again, chantilly is like whipped cream. It comes from the northern French village in the 17th century. I guess that's where they were doing it. So there's some vanilla beans in the chantilly itself. You can kind of see if you look closely. Then there's amaretto ice cream on top. There's some pieces of chocolate, and there's also some candied pecans, of course, because it's praline. So I was going to say this actually has three of the C's because you figure. No, sorry, no, it only has two because it has chocolate and caramel. Amaretto is not coffee. Amaretto is an almond liquor that's common in. It's commonly served with coffee, but there's no actual coffee in it. So it was two out
It's
of.
a great one. Don't be a
Yeah.
degenerate alcoholic like my friend Steven here, but if you if you haven't tried one, I suggest trying like an amaretto sour, which is like for some people like, oh, I don't like cocktails. It's not necessarily a cocktail, but it's a good tasty kind of drink. It's something that I used to have when I was still drinking, and it's a good one. So amaretto sour,
Mm.
you sit and sip on it. It's a good thing. It has a very full bodied flavor to it that you if somebody, I guess some people have better palates than sommeliers. Like Steven is you were kind of almost sort of a sommelier when you're actually working, right?
Well, I was considering it because I was really passionate about wines, and one of the sommeliers before I took my last manager job, he's like, "Hey, why don't you become a sommelier? The position's open." But then I took my other job, so it was like I wanted to keep learning about wines, but like I never like passed any tests or got any certificates or anything.
Yeah. So,
I'm very enthusiastic about wine, and I learn on my own. Like I like to say I know more than the average person, but I mean I'm not an expert by any means.
uh, so yeah, unless you're somebody with that kind of trained tongue to taste out flavors and things like that, and you haven't also been involved in baking, so you haven't, or baking or working at a coffee shop, so you haven't actually tasted or seen get them access to almond concentrate. Like, what do they call it? The purified version where you flavor stuff and things like that.
Almond extract.
Yeah, almond extract. You haven't gotten to that. If you just get an amaretto, I don't think on average you'd be able to pick out that it's almonds. But there's this once you connect the two and you get that, and it's just it's a I really like. I remember when I first had it, I was like, wow, that's very interesting kind of liqueur, whatever. But yeah, it's a good thing. So I can imagine it's probably pretty good as an ice cream. So that's as we mentioned before. What other kind of ice creams could be there? And they mentioned the Grey Goose. I don't think a vodka ice cream would anywhere close to as good as an amaretto ice cream. And then on the top, what if you had the amaretto ice cream and then instead of using milk in the ice cream, you actually switched it out and use like almond milk, like and then you could just go almond. You add like some candied almonds into it, like this be completely almond explosion of a dish. Like I don't know, it'd be some good
Well,
stuff.
if you're gonna do almond milk, it'd probably be more like frozen yogurt because the fat
Yeah.
content would be lower. So unless you added more eggs or did something else, it would be a little different. I mean, it could work, but it's like depends. But I was gonna say if you're doing something healthier, but if you're doing something healthier, you're not gonna put alcohol in your ice cream. So
Well, I mean, alcohol is not necessarily unhealthy. I just think
no.
it leads to degeneracy that Steven's been involved with. I'm kidding.
Steven's life every day.
How about if you add almond butter?
Um, I guess you could. I think the texture would be different because I was gonna say, well, like getting to your point about ice creams, like I've seen Bailey's ice cream, I've seen Kahlua ice cream, but you figure Bailey's is based off dairy and an Irish
Yeah.
whiskey, so it kind of works for that. Kahlua, of course, is a coffee liquor, so it's like you would have to add, more dairy stuff. Um, I think I've seen peanut butter ice cream. I don't know. I feel like it's kind of like a vanilla base, but then they put peanut butter in it.
Yeah.
So probably something like that. Yeah.
Even when
Yeah.
you talk about almond butter, it's not. It's almond butter isn't dairy based, right? That's actually just almond. I don't know. And I've had the coconut ice cream, coconut milk based ice cream, and as I
Yeah.
mentioned, with the coconut milk, coconut cream, that does tend to come out to be more sorbet-ish than actual like full cream ice cream. I think there is something about the full cream ice cream that is very particular to milk and lactose. And sure, soon, maybe 100 years from now, we'll have figured out the chemical composition that makes lactose in that kind of way, to the point
Yeah.
where we can duplicate that in different ways. We find a different sort of guar gum that can now completely do it just 100%, where it's essentially the same thing. Even get to the point where in the future, eventually there'll be those situations where you be 3D printing food or getting to replicate it. You just get like a vat of atoms and you just rearrange them into the foods that you want. So yeah, there'll be something in there soon
Well,
eventually.
I was discussing too with our friend Abraham because he goes by a kosher diet. They're talking about like creating like meats that taste like the actual meats but aren't from the animals. And there's a whole debate among rabbis about is this acceptable because you didn't actually kill that animal. You're just creating something that tastes like it. But then it's, are we not supposed to eat this animal because God says we're not supposed to? It's an interesting discussion. Yeah.
But it's not the animal.
That's the argument that he and others are advancing. Yeah.
Why is there even a debate? It's literally not the animal. Like an animal, by definition, was born somehow and had lived a life, and then its meat came together. Like it's literally not an animal. Like as we mentioned, you are what you consume, and the animal is whatever it consumes and puts it together. But it's breaking these things apart. Like a plant technically isn't a plant. A plant is technically a factory that takes soil and uses photosynthesis to fuel the process of taking minerals from the soil and converting them into plant matter that is edible to certain plant matter is edible to human beings and other animals. That's essentially what it is. So I guess technically you're saying, but if you take out the life form part, directly experiencing a living, having it now that we've gone to the side of the side of the religious tangent here, or theology. But yeah, that seems to be utterly pedantic to actually get to that point. And even I'm somebody who really loves who really likes getting into like semantics and things like this. But this seems to be even too. But then, of course, we are talking about religion, which often doesn't necessarily lend itself too much to critical thinking. It's more like this theoretical being. What did that theoretical being mean about this? And this is something that I will say that I do recognize and consider somewhat valuable about specifically religions like the Jewish faith that have wide ranges of people who are deeply into the scholarship of it, who are revered for actually going in and studying and just being like, ubermenches into the actual knowledge of the thing, and they essentially spend their whole lives like there was this different kind of, again, going on a little aside here, mind let's wind this up. There was there's a section in Jewish in how would I say, like, Jewish land in Israel, where there's a particular sect. I'm forgetting the actual name of them, where essentially all the males in this sect just grow up to become scholars and just look into the Talmud and the Torah, and they just spend their entire time just studying. And the women are the main people who go out there and earn a living by doing different kinds of jobs and things like that. And they live in this kind of 5 or 6 block area in Israel, and that's all they do. So they just go into that. So I guess these kind of people can go into the whole semantics of these things back and forth. But come on, the animal never lived. So it's weird. It's a weird type of thing. The animal
We
never lived.
I was thinking we could maybe do some session with Abram or something where he talks more about this because he knows a lot more than I do. I've just sort of learned by osmosis through him. I've gone to some kosher places, but it's like I don't know enough to get in depth on some of this. So it's like
Yeah, that's nice.
I've absorbed some stuff through him. But Abraham, if you're out there, maybe you can participate, and I expect some demonstrations from that cookbook that I bought you for your birthday.
Yeah, maybe you can tell us a bit about that. And maybe he's gone around. Maybe he's also taken some pictures, or can tell us a bit about different places
Yeah.
and things like that. And in
He's
the New
gone
York.
a few of them he's gone to with me, so I may have the same photos.
Okay, yeah. So that'll
Yeah.
be interesting to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, just do a little aside on focusing specifically on that, like
Sure.
to dish out and be kosher. What are the
Yeah.
restrictions and things like that? Yeah,
Sure.
because I'm yeah, it's yeah. They've
Again,
lost.
I've learned by osmosis through him, but like that's all I know pretty much. I haven't like delved deep on my own, so no.
Okay.
All right,
So
moving on.
anything else about this dish, or no? Moving on.
Um, Not really. Again, I apologize for the sloppy presentation, but you know,
That's okay.
mom wanted to dig in, so.
Let's see again. Tarte praline. Yeah, pralines also. Pralines and cream. One of my favorite ice creams, and of course, what's it called? The pie.
Pecan pie?
Yeah. Yes.
My,
But
my
that's
mom actually makes a good one around Thanksgiving with Kahlua in it. It's really nice. She has a Kahlua cookbook, and that's something she's made like every year. It's really nice.
why the difference in the names?
What do you mean?
Is praline just pecan in French?
And I think the French word for pecan is just the same. I think it's the same as English. I'd have to look, but I think it's the preparation. Like I think if you like grind it down and make like a paste or something, I want to
Okay.
say. Uh,
Okay. So moving on to the next one.
yeah.
Here, it's an interesting plating. I'm liking that. This is a little chocolate kind of. Is that chocolate holders?
Yep. So it's
Yeah.
it's basically sheet chocolate that you lay out around sort of like a mold, so then it solidifies. It's these like thin sheets, but with bent, so then you can put things inside.
Okay, so that's a café brulot,
Yep. Brulot. Yep.
and it's bittersweet chocolate biscuit, brandy marshmallow, praline cremeux, and
Yep.
cremeux, and burnt orange ice cream.
Yep.
Interesting.
Okay.
Here we got
So cat.
two of the C's.
Yep. So you can see here. So there's the bittersweet chocolate biscuit again. Again, I think he likes his chocolate that's not overly sweet. Like, I mean, obviously there's sugar, but it's not, over so there's, I don't have, I'm probably not the best explanation for this, but it's like, again, you melt out chocolate, you can wrap chocolate around certain shapes of things, then you freeze it and then it solidifies like that. And then you pull it off and then you can put that on the plate. Obviously it's, takes a bit of finesse. I mean, I worked a little bit with chocolate in school, but not regularly, so I can't really get too far in depth on that. The cremeux is what's in the front part of the dessert. It's been likened to a mousse, so it's like egg, there's cream. I'm trying to think what else was in there, and so yeah, there's cream, the praline, so there's the pecan paste, and then burnt orange ice cream. The oranges, the supremes, usually they're cooked with a blowtorch or they're caramelized in some way. Then that's mixed into the ice cream. It's usually pureed with the ice cream itself and then frozen. Sorry, it's simmered. No, it's simmered in the liquid and then you strain it out. That's what it is. It's not pureed, and yeah, it's simmered so it absorbs that flavor and then it's strained out. That's how it's smooth. There's no I remember now. There's no actual orange like chunks in the ice cream. It's strained out. Now I remember. Okay. Brandy marshmallow. I think you can tell marshmallow is similar to meringue based off egg whites. There's brandy in it. You hit it with a blowtorch on top. You figure toasted marshmallows plus the brandy gives it some flavor. Little candied pecan along the side. It's a really nice dessert, and I thought it was a cool presentation. And then there's
Yeah.
like a little piece of like a chocolate crisp to hold up the ice cream. Anything else or?
Yeah, hitting pretty much all the different kind of mouthfeels that desserts
Yeah,
can give in this kind of just single dish. It seems kind of great. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's really nice. Yeah, like we say, citrus and chocolate. I mean, I love citrus and chocolate, so I think it works really nice.
Yeah. Definitely eat everything on the plate.
Yeah.
That looks delicious. Um,
Well, I always think of I think I've stated this before, but I always think of what the chefs in school always said about how like each item of your dish should taste great on its own, and like this is definitely a case of that. Like I
yeah,
could like it's one of those dishes where I could take each component, like pair it with something else easily.
yeah, or just have it just alone as
Yeah,
as
yeah.
its own. Yeah, that's good.
Eh.
Okay, and I guess the pralines came up again. I checked up, and what is the difference between pecans and pralines? And this is from Chowhound. No matter how you pronounce it, pecans are delicious and can enrich almost every dessert. That is true, from ice cream to pie. Uh, they're a Thanksgiving staple, one that gives pumpkins some stiff competition. You're probably familiar with the decadence of butter pecan as a flavor of the rich and creaminess of pralines. No, sorry. You're probably familiar with the decadence of butter pecan as a flavor and the rich creaminess of pralines as their own individual confection. But before we get to the dessert options, let's go to another nut. Let's get to another nut of the matter, the pecan itself. So the flavorful nuts aren't actually technically nuts at all. Technically,
Yep.
pecans, like other members of the hickory family, are drupes, a fruit with a single stone or pit surrounded by a husk. And the nut developed. So are cashews also? groups?
Well, because I know like a peanut is a bean technically, but then
Yeah,
I know like I think walnuts are technically nuts, and I'd have to look up the exact. I mean, it's sort of like things that are technically fruits, but we call them vegetables for marketing
yeah.
reasons. So I think it's kind of a similar story.
Because like the cashew is like out, it's like a single cashew on every single cashew fruit and kind of like on the
Yeah,
exterior of it. So that could
yeah,
be a group as well in its own way.
yeah.
So I don't know what's actually saying. So the pralines, yeah, I think as mentioned is when they do that kind of thing where they powder the sugars and things like that and they come together. And so yeah, as you mentioned, I think it comes to depending on the thing. There will be a link if you want to check that out. The actual difference. Actually, just pointing out here. You're gonna point it out. You're gonna point it out now. No, you're not going to point out just clear thing. But yeah, so the praline
Oh,
has a beard as a staple part, and yeah, so there was something that was kind of developed. Pralines have pecans in them, but pecans don't have to be pralines. I
yeah,
think that's a key thing to kind of remember.
yeah.
So, yeah. Okay. So anything else you would say?
That's all I have to say.
Okay. So the next one, petit fours or financiers with brandied cherries, and
Sure.
yeah, it's cool, cool.
So a petit four, I almost like to describe as like the reverse end of the amuse bouche. Like the amuse bouche, if you recall in the first video, it's the thing you eat
Oh
at the
yeah.
beginning to open up the palate. The petit four is something you have at the end, like after your dessert, just to kind of like snack on. So this is called a financier with it's actually so apparently they were created in the 1700s by a baker who had a bakery near the French Stock Exchange, and I guess the bankers would come in and eat them. So it's a brown butter almond cake with brandied cherries. I think the brown butter cake is just the general recipe. Then you can add whatever fruit you want. So just you bake that on a sheet tray, you stamp it out, you cut it. Well, sorry, you cut it out into cubes here. Little powdered sugar at the top. You know, nice little thing to have at the end. And petit four means small oven in French. So I guess it looks like a little square rectangle. So. Oh,
Oh. It
yeah.
also matches the first ones we opened
Yeah.
with cornbread type of things. Also like two pieces of cornbread served on a
Yeah.
plate like this. Kind of like bookends the kind of thing in a way. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, if you go to high-end places, they'll give you usually like a selection of these. Like Les Spolier, where I did my externship, they had like pieces of chocolate. They had like passion fruit. Sorry, it was like what was it? It was like guava candy, and there were like three or four different things. I mean, DB Bistro, like I say, because it's not like really high end, they just give you these, which I'm not complaining. But if you go to a high end place, they'll give you like a whole selection of like a bunch of petit four. It's kind of nice. It's like having a bunch of chocolates at the end of the meal or something. Uh,
Okay.
uh,
It's a bit it's more solid of a cake. Right? It's like more like pound cake. It's like a thicker, more dense cake.
yeah, and the butter is brown, so you have that sort of like if you have brown butter, it has that kind of roasted flavor.
Yeah, like
Uh,
molasses type of thing. Yeah, interesting.
uh,
I think what else? Anything else I'd say about
Not
it?
much, no. I've had other petty fours there, but I think that's the only ones. Those are the only ones I took pictures of.
Okay,
Uh, uh.
sounds like a nice solid dish. Yeah. Okay, I'm trying to think if I. No, I don't. Yeah. Okay. So on to the next and last one, right?
Yep.
Okay. So here we go with citrus madeleines.
Sure. So this was like a compliments happy birthday to me. You can sort of see my dad's shirt in front of me there. So madeleines are these French cookies. They tend to be lighter. You bake them in something. There's a specific mold for them. There's different versions of it. Like I've seen metal tins, but what they use now, I don't know if you're familiar with a silpat is. So a silpat, it's this. I think it's made of fiberglass, but it's like you can bake things in it, like it can withstand enough heat. So it's like this flexible material, but that can withstand heat. And what you do is you actually put the dough inside that. I mean, you spray it with the baking spray to make sure it doesn't stick, and then you bake everything like that. And they rise enough so they sort of puff out a little in the thing, and then you pull them out and dust with sugar. It's kind of a basic French cookie. I'm not gonna say sugar cookies exactly, but like sometimes they serve them. I've seen them served for like early in the day. I've seen them served for dessert. They're like just like a nice little thing to snack on, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a little cute little cake type of things. Like
Yeah,
if there is a food that cute madeleines are, just little kind
yeah,
of shape that they have, little small little mountains. It's just yeah, they're
yeah,
nice. They're a nice cute dish.
yeah. And Minetta Tavern has them with chocolate sauce as well. I mean, here the chocolate's more for decoration, but it's edible too. But with Minetta, it's like they have like sauce you can actually dip it in. So
Yeah. I
citrus
re-
and chocolate again.
I was born in France, and this is one of the memories I do have. Like, I guess I left when I was 5, but I do remember from early really enjoying these with this time in France. It's a very French thing, this madeleines. But you can find them anywhere. These are another thing you can find anywhere. And I guess yeah, finding this special way to actually make them, because the dough itself, as we mentioned before, just in general, baked or fried dough is a common thing that human beings enjoy. And there's many different ways of doing it. But this one, you can probably use that dough and bake it in
Yeah.
different ways, and it wouldn't be, and prepare it in different ways, and it wouldn't be madeleine. Part of it being a madeleine is having that particular type of dish to do it. And what's the flavoring in it? It's like citrus in the sense of citrus. So in the sense also, could you do like a foie gras madeleine?
Um, that is a good question because I'm not sure what the fat content is. Because remember, think about foie is majority fat. So if you
Yeah.
put it in something like ice cream, it works because ice cream's already fatty. But if you're doing it in something that's leaner, like it just occurred to me, maybe even like foie gras brioche, like substitute butter for foie gras or something. I mean, that
Yeah.
would be a really dense bread, but I mean, you could do it. I mean, you would have to adjust the recipe, and the bread would be like, 20 bucks a slice or whatever. But I mean, you could probably figure it out somehow.
Like with the foie gras, there's also probably ways to like dehydrate it, or like if you do something where you do like frog legs, where you maybe dry the frog legs and you powder them somehow, you grind them down, and you can include that into like a thing, like the same way like you use cinnamon sticks when you grind that down and put it in things. So there's ways to kind of like as you like if you can't tell, I've been cooking a lot more recently, so my mind is thinking of different ideas
Well,
and different things to kind of try out.
the one thing I've seen that some people do is they take foie gras torchon. That's a dish in the earlier video. You can go back and listen to the explanation if I'm not going to rehash the whole thing. But what they do is some people will actually freeze it, and they'll actually take a microplane, like the thing you use to grate zest off, and they'll actually shave it over top of things. So it's just like it's frozen, so it grates, but it holds the pieces. And when it comes out to the table, it's melted a little bit. But then you get like foie sort of grated across different things, and then so you have the foie gras plus the flavor of the spices and whatever else was in there.
Yeah, so there's probably ways to do these things. And there's been a few restaurants where we're going to like now into the more chemical gastronomy. There's a particular chef, I think you had mentioned him before, that's really going into that, where he's using like chemistry sets pretty much. like
Well,
the,
Ferran Adria is considered the chef who pioneered it, but then there's like the Fat Duck in England. That's a place that has the candy where you can eat the wrapper, and there's a lot of people have sort of expanded on this since. But Alinea, there's the place in Chicago where you can get the I'm trying to remember if it's like an apple flavored balloon or something, and you can suck the air out of it, and you're talking high, and you eat the balloon after or something. Yeah.
I actually, one of my friends from high school she worked, I'm not sure if she still lives in Chicago, but she most definitely was working at Alinea for a couple of years. And you're talking about your friend Ron Swanson. I don't know if you've seen that one link where him and Tom takes him to this new age kind of
Oh
bar.
yeah.
Like that. Yeah, where it's like,
Is
it's
this
like
entire establishment a practical joke of some kind?
yeah. So yeah, they can be
Because
something.
they're making fun of that, like vodka served in the form of a flash of light. Like nobody does that, but they're like, how far can we push these ideas?
Yeah, and
So
that's
my this mixologist I used to work with worked at Alinea too, and he told me it was crazy, like the training there. Like you had to actually walk around, like let's say this is a chopstick, you had to put it like this, and you had to get into the habit of walking around the dining room like this, like your head had to be up the whole time,
wow.
and you had to carry a tray with a string hanging, and the string couldn't move to make sure you had like a steady hand. Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
With some of these kind of things, like there's ambiance in restaurants and things.
Yeah,
There might be some people who are of a certain countenance in
yeah.
themselves where they start noticing some of these things. But to me, I don't think I would notice. Maybe subconsciously you notice if you see some people with it, but then your mind might not if everybody's just walking around with their head high. They could be different kind of cues that humans don't necessarily we might not all as consciously pick up on as other people do. And there's a close thing. How many animals have issues where they say, "Oh, never approach this animal," even domesticated animals. Don't approach that animal while they're eating. There is something very personal about that process of intaking nutrition that maybe there is some things to it. Maybe these are subconscious things that really do elevate it to a different level when you're in that sense. But then now, as we've mentioned, there's places where you go in and you're blindfolded or it's completely pitch black. They get to where you just go in there and you're just eating the foods and stuff like that. So there's other things that go into the actual consumption of the actual food, nutrition itself than these other things. So I don't know. Maybe
Well,
they
so
started.
I was gonna say it was so funny. So when my mom went to Les Spalier, where I did my externship for the first time, she thought it was so funny. She's like, "All these people are walking around like they have brooms up their asses." Excuse me, madam, how are you? And she just thought it was funny because she's not used to that style of service. But you notice too, it's not just the way they present themselves, but even the way they speak. I remember like other places I worked, "Hey guys, how's it going?" But then the higher end place, you're supposed to say, "Hello, sir. Good evening. Hello, madam. Welcome. Well, madam, what would you like?" And there's stuff now with the political correctness about like it used to be that you could ask the man what the woman wanted. Now you're not supposed to do that. Things like that. Yeah, there's that. But I was telling the guy at the place I was at yesterday how I've worked in like higher end more versus casual places, and like the Austrian place I worked in the East Village, like the servers would all work in like street clothing and it was very like casual. But the thing is, you go to that place kind of expecting that, so it's different. Whereas if you go to somewhere like Danielle, you expect like suit, tie, very formal. So for me, it's a question of like the type of restaurant, you get what you pay for. My concern with the more casual thing is when it goes to being unprofessional, like people hanging out on their phones and like ignoring staff, and then it's
Yeah.
like you need something like that's where it sort of crosses the line for me. Like I don't care if people use slang, they dress casually, but it's like if you start ignoring people and like don't care, that's when it starts crossing into being unprofessional rather than just more lax. Yeah.
Is the service is
Yeah.
the thing. If you're a waiter, if
Yeah.
you're there to serve food, as long as you're serving the food, to
Yep.
me, everything else is rather superfluous. If nothing you're doing is necessarily, in fact, quite the contrary. And I guess in some more higher end places, once you order, I think you have to call the person over, or maybe they
Yeah.
keep an eye and they'll only come by to like maybe just fill your water in kind of discreet ways without necessarily. But I think to me, something like coming in while I'm having a meal, while I'm eating, and be like, "Hey, is everything okay?" Like I'm an adult. If something's wrong, I'll call you over for it. Like that to me, kind of more actually ends up disrupting the process, the meal, and disrupting having that dish when somebody comes in and starts asking you things from the external, from the actual table. So there's a line to actually there's a line to
Well,
be met there. Yeah.
Well, having worked front of the house, what I would say to you, and I learned this in my last two jobs, is you have to kind of do it like on a case by case basis. Because the thing is, there are older people who come in by themselves and are lonely. So if you stop and talk to them, they love it because they like that attention. But then like a couple on a date wants to be left alone. So it's like you keep an eye to make sure they have everything, but then like don't talk to them otherwise because they want to be left alone. And it's like if they're having a moment and staff keeps coming over, it's like what the
Yeah.
hell, you know? So it's like for me, it's like you have to kind of read it on a case by case basis. But then there's other people like me, like I usually eat out alone, so it's like I like talking to staff because if I'm by myself it's like whatever, but again it's like if you're with friends or family, most people want to be left alone, so you just have to learn how to read the people and sort of adjust accordingly, I find.
Yeah. If you
Yeah.
ever see me at a restaurant, don't come talk to me. Sorry. Usually
there,
by myself. Don't do it.
one of the casual chain restaurants, I'm trying to think if it was Outback or what, they do the thing where they take your order, they actually sit next to you at the table. And I had a teacher, they would sit down next to you at the table and start writing it down. I had a teacher in school who would actually push them out of it and say, "Get out of here. If I wanted you to sit, I would have invited you to the table."
Yeah, I mean, and that's another thing. How much does that actually count? The environment, because some of these places you are in part paying for the ingredients and things like. But if you had it delivered, if you ate it somewhere else, would that be same? Would a Big Mac all of a sudden elevate to a higher level of taste if you had it at Linear because everybody's walking with their chin up? I don't necessarily think that it would, but it might for some people. Just the perception of what you're having might be different. Whereas if you have some food that's supposed to be served in like pitch black room with like certain sounds coming in and certain smell being wafted through the place, if you just had that at home when you were sitting in front of the TV eating it, it might lose some aspect to it. So some of these things when you go to these places, there's reasons certain places continue and be successful. There's some reasons other places go out of business. And this is a calculated thing, very thin margins, and restaurants are, I think the thinner margins in businesses in general have a high failure rate, but I think restaurants are some of the highest ones in there. And one might not realize this because people like food, people like to eat. You don't really have to convince people that that eating is something they want to do. It's not like, hey, you really want this Ferrari or you really want this kind of car that does these things that you don't really necessarily. Eating is something we have to do to survive. But maybe due to that, there's so much competition that it gets to a point where it's tough to figure out that right kind of mix together. And as you mentioned, even with the DB, unfortunately, it might be one of the places that might not even actually open up. We haven't opening up yet. And there was a different restaurant we mentioned It's close to where I used to live. We talked about where I think it was the one where Anthony Bourdain started working in the kitchen. Where what was that? I forget the name of it. He mentioned
Leal,
it's like a French restaurant. What was it?
Leal, the bistro he was the chef at, or
Yeah,
brasserie rather.
was it on the one on 23rd or 24th, like around there? Because we talked
Because
about that.
you also live near 11 Madison Park, which is like the really high end one, but Bourdain didn't work there to my knowledge. I'm trying to think because I think Leal, you might be referring to that. That was a brasserie where he worked and he went back and worked with Eric Repair that service. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I'll double check of things, but yeah, it was
Because
the one that.
that closed to my knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think that was it. That was the first place. I think it might have been the first place he started, and that place closed. So why does that place close that early, and then why does like a place like DB Bistro continue going, or why does DB Bistro have the struggles that it has now post COVID, and why? And part of the ideas that we had with this one is probably some sharing with the staff and the
Yeah.
management, and if not the staff and the managers, it's definitely sharing with the procurement of the actual food that's being made at the places. And he's probably thinking like right now, cost benefit analysis is better to get the more higher end ones up and going, get that clientele back in, and we can see if I get DB back up and going again. But yeah, I don't know.
And I think I might have mentioned this in a previous discussion, but someone was telling me about how there's a payment protection program where some businesses got money and some businesses got it, but they got it later. So they were like debating staying open, but then they got all this money. So they're like, well, if the city's opening up, let's just reopen. And then it's like you have enough cash to pay for your food, pay for your staff, all this. Then once people are like, oh, this place is opening and they start going, then you start making back that money and then you start bringing in profits again. So I think like that's happened for some places too. I've heard, yeah.
Yeah, I can see some big changes in the restaurant
Yeah.
capital of the world, as some
Yeah.
people like to call New York City.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's been the desserts. Anything else you want to say?
That's all. I mean, it's a multi-part series. Hopefully you enjoyed everything. I definitely enjoyed discussing this as always. We're debating what restaurant I want to do next. I'm thinking of doing, because my last two jobs closed unfortunately, but one was Italian, the other was Japanese, and I was thinking I want to do something different because we've already done two French places. I have another Spanish place, but we already did another Spanish. So I want to mix it up a little bit. I don't want to just do French. So
Okay.
but I'm figuring it out.
Even though we have this on, this like I said, this one, the first part is coming out as we're recording this today, and then it's going to be 3 more weeks of this part. So even if you'd like, we can also just record whatever. Even if you want to record the ones that you have ready already. What's the name of the other Spanish place that you have ready?
So it's called Casamono.
Yeah.
It's a little higher end than Huertas. It's the portions are a little bigger, food's a little more expensive. I have quite a few photos. I went with my boss, my previous boss, I should say, and then I've been 2-3 times on my own, so I have a bunch of photos from there as
Okay.
well.
So we might start recording that. We don't have to. I don't have to post all of these in order as well, because once we
Yeah.
get this up and going, you can do even shorter ones. I'm sure you'll dabble a bit in this restaurant month coming up, so we can do maybe the shorter ones, or you get like a few dishes together and just do that. And today this is my week experience, and I went and I picked this and this. But yeah, there could be something to do that. Pizza week just ended. They did extend the pizza week here in Kenya. I never actually partook in any of those pizzas. Unfortunately, I mean, not unfortunately, it was by plan. I could have, but I decided not to. There's normally Burger Week is another week that they have here. Food-wise, there's a restaurant week as well that's different. I think those are the only 3 food-related weeks that they have here right now. But then what else do you need besides burgers, pizza, and food? And then restaurants in general. But
Well,
yeah,
because like I
think
said, Restaurant Week was originally 1 week, but then it was so successful they just kept expanding it. And it's like, but they still call it Restaurant Week for whatever reason. So the month,
But yeah. Okay, but one thing I have been doing is doing shorter recordings about just certain things that I make, because normally I just freestyle things, but now I'm going more into like, okay, with this in mind, let me actually get the chef note up, things back up and going. So there'll be more of that. I think I'll start posting that. Still unsure if they'll be separate from the Dying Alive channel or somewhere else. But for now, we're just going to keep going with this. Thanks again, Stephen, for sharing your knowledge of this delicious dishes and making people hungry out there, and hopefully other people out there enjoying this anywhere close to as much as I enjoy these conversations and pretty much every conversation I have with Stephen. But yeah.
Sure. Pleasure as always. Hopefully you all enjoyed it and do it again soon.
Okay. So Stephen, stay on after, but for now, goodbye, guys, gals, and
Bye-bye.
everything else in between.